Okay, I think we're live.
Let me pinch myself. Wait. Oh yeah, I'm alive.
You're live, I'm live. Okay, everybody's breathing. That's an excellent start. Now let me see if I can. Okay, I think I've got a spot for comments here. So if anybody is watching this and you can see us, please say hello. I think we are up and running now. Yes, I see us on my phone. Excellent. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the live monthly gathering for the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community, the month of March. Can you believe it's almost spring? Today I have joining me a very special guest. I'm really excited because I've been wanting to bring him on one of our Facebook Lives since he was my first podcast guest. What was that, May of last year?
A long time ago.
Back when we were newly into the pandemic and everything was changing and I got the podcast started. So let me give you a quick introduction for Dr. Ken Harris. He was a pioneer in holistic healing. He's the founder of the Waldo Wellness Center in New Jersey, providing all natural health and wellness for 45 years. He has shared his insights as an author, workshop presenter, and keynote speaker in his new book, Synchronicity. The Magic, the Mystery, the Meaning, great book. In this book, he talks about meeting Dr. Wayne Dyer and Ram Dass and many other great stories. He was a friend and chiropractor to Dr. Wayne Dyer. So, Ken, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, I'm humbled and honored as always, Nadia, to be interviewed by you.
Oh, well, thank you. We jumped through some technological hurdles today, but we're here and I'm so excited about it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this book? Why don't we start there, Synchronicity?
Well, I started having a series of sequential synchronicities with greater intensity and rapidity. And I got the idea that, well, maybe there was something for me to share with the world and teach them how to be aware, awake, and alert to their own synchronicities. Because the truth is, Nadia, synchronicity is happening to everyone all the time. They're just not aware of it. So I came up with a business card. Synchronicity is ubiquitous.
Mm.
Great word, but it just means it's happening to everyone, everywhere, all the time. And the book gives you a roadmap on how to figure that out for yourself. I came to discover there were 7 distinct types of so-called random coincidences, but they're all meaningful in some way. And there are 6 reasons we meet people on our life path. There are 5 questions you should ask yourself introspectively, the why. And then there are 4 actual neuroscience practices you can do to increase the intensity and rapidity of your own synchronicities. Many times they're given by divine grace, and many times you can actually create them.
Mm-hmm. Now you've got some resources on your website, right? That people can download some
Yes,
handouts to help guide them to understanding synchronicity and inviting that into their lives.
right.
So where can people find that?
Well, my website is very simple. It's Dr. the word DOCTOR, Ken, Ken, Harris, HARRIS.com. There's 100,000 Dr. Ken Harrises, but I'm the only one with the full DOCTOR. And on the website, if you register, and the operative word here, ladies and gentlemen, is for free. You're going to get a 5-page PDF file sent to your email, which will discuss the 7654 formula for synchronicity, a user-friendly guide for categorizing and understanding them. That alone, you don't have to read my book. That alone will give you the framework. But if you want to have a great, inspiring, entertaining, uplifting experience, this book was written through me. It wasn't written by me. I can guarantee you that much.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like the mission that you're sharing of, wanting people to know that synchronicities are happening all the time. I feel like that's what motivated Dr. Wayne Dyer to write I Can See Clearly Now. Oh, which is actually right behind me.
His last book, one
This
of his
one.
last books.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it as his memoir, but he really wanted to demonstrate that there's kind of this future pull. There's these connections that in hindsight are a lot clearer, that you reach these choice points and these things happen in your life that help to direct you or help to sort of put you on a new path or remind you that you're already on the right one. Now you have heard, I'm sure, thousands of stories of synchronicities from people, and you have your own. What's your favorite story in your own life of synchronicity? Do you have
Well,
one?
I don't have one. I have a potpourri of synchronicity. Some of them are funny, and some of them will bring tears to your eyes. They were that impactful. But Wayne was a master magician of synchronicity. He experienced them all the time. When you open up your crown chakra and your heart, it draws the people, places, circumstance, and events right to you. And I met
Hmm.
Wayne. I mean, it was a wow moment. I met him 17 years apart, two times by synchronicity. And I had I was the second time I met him, I was giggling because I didn't even know he lived on Maui. I wasn't
Hmm.
looking for him. I'm walking along the beach, and there he was. And one thing led to another, and we had a reunion. Because the first time I met him, I'll never forget the fact that he put his arm around me. He was quite tall, and I looked up at his baby blue eyes, and he looked down at me with the expression of just pure love. And he says, "You know, Ken, I think you and I have one heart." That's what he said to me. And I never forgot that. And I felt it. So when I met him 17 years later, I reminded him, and he knew, he remembered. You remember what they say, a moment in the soul can last a lifetime. When you
Yeah.
have those magic moments, they're pivotal moments. You don't forget them. They're energetically imprinted into your DNA. I believe, this is my personal belief, that Wayne and I were spiritually connected, not just this lifetime, but in another lifetime because
Hmm.
I got to know him very intimately. I mean, I shared energetic healing with him. I shared chiropractic treatments, and he opened his heart to me, and I got to know the man, not just the image, but I got to know the guy, and he was a beautiful soul, as you
Yeah.
and helped millions of people, and generous beyond generous. So I just feel so blessed and thankful that the universe, the higher power, whatever you want to call it, God, arranged the meeting.
Yeah. So tell us about that time that you bumped into Wayne on the or next to the beach, really.
Well, we were walking. He lived in Kaanapali. He lived on the island of Maui in the Kaanapali region, and he was walking. He was always on his phone. People were calling him from all over the world. So he's about 100 feet ahead of me on the phone. And when I looked up and I saw him, I got so excited. I just yelled out, "Wayne!" And he looked up and he dropped his phone. Thank God, because he lost the call. He had no other choice but to come over and engage with me, and that's when we got reacquainted. My wife Judith was actually with us, so the three of us engaged in about a 15 to 20-minute conversation.
Hmm.
I reminded him that we had met 17 years prior at a chiropractic convention. He was the keynote speaker, and I was just overjoyed. I started quoting his books to him. I started giving him, so he knew I knew. I had read all his books. He was a
True
mentor.
fan.
He was a
Yep.
mentor of mine, and so he had a great smile. We said goodbye initially, and about a half hour later, this is what freaked me out. He came running. He used to run. He was a great
Hmm.
runner, and he comes running down the path, and he says, "Ken." And I looked up second time, and I said, "Hi, Wayne." It was a half hour. Inter- there was an interval of a half hour, and he said, "I got to tell you." His is his words. He says, "God spoke to me and he told me you're going to come and help me. Would you be open to doing that?" Now, when someone says that to you, what would your response be? Of course.
Absolutely.
How
Yeah.
can I be of service? So that's how I got invited to his condo. He had two condos. One he lived in, across the hall is one he worked in. He had a
Hmm.
long commute, and they
Yeah.
both faced the ocean. So I had the privilege of spending some time with him on several occasions, and the rest was history. We communicated back and forth with emails, and I was very sad when I found out that he had passed.
Yeah.
I thought he left too soon. But they say no. Ram Dass would say no one dies too soon or too early or too late.
Hmm. Yeah. Wayne
It was
said the
this
same
time.
thing. Yeah. Nobody dies before it's their time.
He had said to me, he said, Ken, I've climbed all the ladders on the rung of life. I'm on the scaffold of my life. The next step is off. So he kind of had a premonition that, he was finished with his mission. He had
Hmm.
woken up millions of people. And, he had all the awards and all the toys and all that, but he didn't really need anything of this world anymore. And they say you leave when you complete your mission, hopefully. And his famous quote, "Don't die with your music unplayed."
Hmm.
You've heard him say that. I'm
Yeah.
sure if you read the books. And he played his music.
Yeah.
He had an orchestra. He had a symphony. He didn't just have a song. He played a symphony. And on a human level, yeah, I was very sad, but I had to accept it like everybody else. You know, there's a time to be born and a time to die.
I think he's such a beautiful example of following that calling with courage and um, just really kind of sticking with it and going in the direction that always felt right to him because he had pressure from his publishers and he had pressure from other people to go in different directions or do things differently than he did. Um, but he really got that message out and I think that he can be proud of all the work that he did. I'm sure he was. When you hear from people who were close to him, they say he wasn't afraid of death, right? He wasn't afraid. So I think, in a sense, maybe he was ready. I don't think we were ready. And I don't know, maybe we were never really want to say goodbye. But I think he was at peace. He was at peace. And he was still doing what he loved. I remember he talked to oh gosh, who was that now? Dr. Christian Northrup. Dr. Christian Northrup said, "Well done, Wayne. Happy, healthy, dead." Like that's the way to do it, right? Like don't like have this long decline and suffering. No, you just live, 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 live. Boom, that was it, right?
Right.
Story's over.
He was the metaphor for a candle burns brightly from the beginning to the end,
Mm-hmm.
sputters once or twice and goes out. He died in his sleep from a heart attack. Uh,
Yeah.
That's what they never autopsied him, but I think that was the pronounced cause of death. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember over his bed, he had pictures all over his house, you know, of Oprah Winfrey and Ram Dass and his kids, blah blah blah. But on the headboard of his bed was "Expect a miracle."
Mm-hmm.
That was his attitude. Every day was an opportunity to experience the miracle of life itself. And again, I feel privileged and honored that I had that opportunity to get him to know him in a very intimate and deep way. Because I did energetic healing with him. He was open to
Mm-hmm.
that, in addition to chiropractic treatment. And I'll never forget one session uh, when we concluded. I didn't know where he began and I ended, or he ended and I began. We
Emerged.
actually merged into the unified field. And when he went to sleep after the session because he had a lot of people on his wire, and he needed to rest. So he went into a deep sleep for about an hour. And when he came out of the room, he looked at me and he said, "Where did you learn how to do that? In chiropractic college?" I said, "No, I was instructed and trained in a spiritual community." He said,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, Ken, the truth is, I felt like I went into heaven, a heavenly state of consciousness, and I had a hard time wanting to come back." Is what he told me.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "So I want to thank you for that." And he says, "Is there any place I could learn that?" He's always open to learning. You know,
Yeah.
Wayne was a student of
Mm-hmm.
life. Yeah, and he had an adventurous spirit for sure.
Open to everything, attached to nothing. Yeah. Now, you call that an attunement, is that right? The energy
Well, the
healing that
form
you
of
did?
energetic training I received is the attunement process. And
Mm,
you don't get an attunement, you don't give an attunement, you share an attunement. And it's designed to really reconnect the person receiving the attunement, so called, to
mm-hmm,
their own soul self.
mm,
It's not like Reiki or a therapeutic touch or where they're trying to move energy and
in the
direct it.
body.
No, the attunement opens the portals. There are seven endocrine glands which connect us to spirit, and each one is very specific, attached to an emotion. And they're like gates. They're like valves, opened or closed. And you can open them energetically, and then the person has a greater experience of themselves. It's not that they're experiencing you; they're experiencing their own soul self. So in that way, it's unique.
So, what's the difference between the seven endocrine glands and the chakras?
Well, the seven endocrines start with the pineal, which is your
Mm-hmm,
connection to your soul self. Then
mm-hmm,
there's the pituitary. Then you got the thyroid. Then you got the thymus. Then you got the pancreas. Then you
mm-hmm,
got the adrenals and the gonads. They correlate to the chakras, but they're very specifically directed towards the glandular function. Now, glands make hormones.
mm-hmm,
Hormones on a physical level are very potent modulators of many body chemical processes. So when you open them up, there's a cascading release of various hormones synergistically in the body. It's almost like a fail-safe system. They all
mm-hmm.
work in conjunction, like a thermostat. They turn on and they turn off. The primary one is the pineal. The pineal is really our crystal connection to soul.
Hmm.
And if that's not open, not too much else happens in the body. As a matter of fact, when you die, that's where the silver cord is separated from your soul self. It's through the pineal. Now, Joe Dispenza is doing a lot of work. People listening probably have heard of Joe Dispenza.
Hmm.
And in his meditations, he has specific frequencies to open the pineal. And that's your connecting point to soul self.
That's really interesting. So you talk about this attunement as the goal being to connect you to your soul self. So if we were connected to our higher self, if we were fully integrated with our higher self, how would that change things for us?
Well, you wouldn't be asking anybody else for advice. You go direct. I'm serious about this. You wouldn't be looking to have someone else tell you what to do or not to do, because
Mm.
your soul already knows. It's the busyness of the human mind that disconnects you from your soul. You know, it creates interference, static in the system. But once that field is open, you'll get all the answers to all your questions self-referred.
Hmm.
You won't be going to psychologists, or anybody else for the answer, because we all have our own answers. It's just
Hmm.
that there's a lot of disturbance in the field. You know, if a lake is very still, you'll see a perfect reflection of the mountain into the lake. Perfect. But if you emotionally upset the lake by disturbing it, and
Hmm.
that's where most people have the most problem, in the emotional body, not the physical.
Surface disturbance.
Right. Then you
Yeah.
cannot see clearly. That's why he wrote "I Can See Clearly Now."
Hmm.
That was his last book. You
Hmm.
know, you get to a state and a place of pure silence. You'll hear. Your soul's been talking. The soul's talking to us all the time. We're just outer directed. We have our attention in the wrong place. So, anyone listening to this, the best way to connect to your soul self is through meditation.
Hmm.
After the mind quiets down, the monkey mind, you're going to get the intuitive understanding of what your next step should or should not be.
Now, there's a lot of different forms of meditation. Do you have a favorite one?
I was trained by Deepak Chopra, so I did
Hmm.
the mantra meditation, primordial sound meditation. But I'm going to be
Hmm.
honest with you. Just a simple mindfulness based meditation practice is fine. You can get that from John Kabat-Zinn. He wrote a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are, and
Yep.
with a little companion audio. And it's all about focusing on the breath
Hmm.
and becoming what my friend Ram Dass used to say, the loving, witnessing presence.
Hmm.
Become an observer of your thoughts. We're not our thoughts. We
Hmm.
have thoughts any more than we're not our bodies. We have an earth suit. Thankful on planet Earth, you need an
Hmm.
earth suit. And we have an emotional body. And that's where most people get into trouble. We don't get training in the right use of emotions. We go to phys ed for our body, we
Hmm.
go to school for mental training, but emotionally, people are not trained on how to deal with the disturbance.
So, what do emotions have to offer us then?
Well, the primary emotion is love. Love is the connection to God. God, they say God is love,
Hmm.
but we have a lot of subgradients to love. That goes from love to fear and everything in
Hmm.
between. So they all serve a purpose, to try to keep us like gyroscopically on our path. I would say trust your gut, trust your feelings. If it feels right, do it. If it feels wrong, no matter how much your head tells you to do it, don't do
Hmm.
it. Listen, and the wisdom of the body will tell you. It's either going to be in your throat, in your heart, in your solar plexus, or in your intestines. You're going to get a feeling. A contraction is no, and an expansion is yes. So when you ask the question of yourself, should I or shouldn't I, ask your body how it feels in those different centers.
Hmm.
And women are much more in touch with this than men, I have to say. Women are much more intuitive. No, they are. It's
Hmm.
just you're wired differently. You're more in touch with your feeling realm. They say women are emotional. Yeah, sure. But it's the right
Some
use
men
of
are
it.
too. I got to give credit. There's some really incredible sensitive men out there, but yes, I
Well,
agree with you. It's largely women that are more in tune with, and I think that's cultural too. It's not just biological. I think it's cultural too because
right.
women are. It's okay for them to feel. It's okay for them to publicly display emotion, right? So we're encouraged into fostering that in our lives. Not anger. We can't show anger, but the other stuff, right? But men, they get chastised for it. So,
Real men don't cry, right? But
mm,
don't believe that. Real men do cry. I had the opportunity of interviewing soldiers who came back from the war zones. These are some of the most beautiful men, and they cried in the
mm-hmm,
interview, describing what they had to do and what they had experienced. So, yeah, it's a platitude. The women are more in touch, but yes, a man who has touched his feminine side, because we
mm-hmm,
have male and female in all of us,
mm-hmm,
they'll be more sensitive to their feeling now and won't be afraid to display it at the appropriate time. Now, anger has a role, by the way. Anger is not a bad emotion. There's a time for anger. If you suppress anger, it becomes rage. Rage is toxic.
or illness.
Well, they say cancer underlying many cancers is this resentment and anger that has never been expressed in the world.
Mm-hmm,
But anger can get you motivated to move, to change.
mm-hmm,
And I would say if somebody violates your boundaries, speak sooner than later. Don't
mm-hmm,
say, well, I don't want to upset, rock the boat, I'm going to suppress this. No, because over time, it's going to build, 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 and then it's going to come out as rage.
mm-hmm.
So, couples listening to this, speak your truth sooner to each other than later. Don't withhold from one another. I'm married 52 years. I know from whence I speak. If something is upsetting you in a loving way, express it in the moment. Don't say,
Mm-hmm.
well, I don't want to upset him. I don't want to upset her. No, no. Honor your boundaries. Be kind, but speak up.
Mm-hmm. Don't let it sit. Now, I've been thinking about Louise Hay and how she studied this really, but then she created that book of affirmations that off of the premise that symptoms in the body show up in different places based on, different triggers. So that if you're having a pain in your back or something, it can mean this. Is that something that you believe in or something that you've studied?
Well, I don't believe in it. I know it. I've been a chiropractor for 45 years. I've seen it expressed in somatic illness. The issues are in the tissues. That was Carolyn Mace's famous.
Like that.
The issues are in your tissues. Yeah, it's not what's the matter with me. Usually, it's who's the matter with me.
Mm.
Who in your life is the pain in the neck? Who is the pain in the butt? The
Mm-hmm.
pitcher we call them, the pain in the derriere. Yeah, everything. If an unmetabolized emotion, one that's
Mm-hmm.
not expressed, will get suppressed into the physical body, and over time can cause pathology, without a doubt. We know this. This is not theoretical. We know it to be true. You can map the whole body, and every pain down to your little pinky on your left hand means something different than your pinky on your right hand.
Mm-hmm. So when someone would come to you as a chiropractor and they're saying, "Oh, I've got this pain or that or whatever," what's the process of treatment for that, or what sort of questions do you ask people to help align
Well,
them?
initially, we do a full physical exam, a full case
Mm-hmm.
history, maybe X-ray or MRI or CT studies. So I deal with the immediate concern of the patient. They're coming in primarily initially for pain and
Mm-hmm.
relief of pain.
That's a
Now, I
good
think,
motivator, isn't it? Pain.
well, it gets them across the dorsal. The fear level goes down when the pain level goes up, and you seek help.
Yeah.
So in the early days, I was not so sensitive to people's emotional conditions. I sometimes went right in and said, "Hey, this is what's going on," and so of course, no one wants to hear that, and out they
Mm-hmm.
went. So as I became more mature and smarter, I dealt with what they came in for, and I could demonstrate, I could give them quote relief naturally without drugging them,
Yeah.
suppressing it. Then we would go deeper into why do you think you keep having this situation? What's going on in your life? Do you
Mm-hmm.
want to tell me how's your relationship with your husband or your wife or your kids or your job? And then the people would open up. I had people crying every week in my office. I mean, the releases would I didn't just treat them physically. I made space emotionally for them to have a release, a safe place without judgment. That's the key. If people feel they're going to be judged by the doctor as good or bad or indifferent, they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to open their hearts. But the Dalai Lama said it beautifully: in the presence of love, there's no heart that will not open.
Mm. Love
So I
that.
tried to create that space for them
Mm-hmm.
where they felt safe.
When I was a kid, I was really quite young. My mom started going to see a chiropractor, and he became a good family friend of ours. But so I grew up, going with my mom. I was probably like, gosh, I don't know how young I was, very small, maybe 6 years old or something. And she would go to the chiropractor regularly, and he became a family friend, like I said. And so I was aware of this as being sort of a normal modality for helping to take care of your body. But what's interesting about that is she became a real believer that the chiropractic care could actually improve the whole health of your body, that it wasn't just about relieving this pain, that it could actually make your organs function better and you could feel better in your life. So I think that was probably, like, my parents are pretty traditional, they're pretty conservative, but I think that was my early introduction to alternative medicine or alternative treatments. And I think it opened my mind when I was a kid.
Well, the influence that we have is through the nervous system, which is the control and coordinating system of all body function.
Mm-hmm.
And when you bring an alignment, a physical alignment, and the head and the heart coherently align, the emotional body is also tuned up. So they
Mm-hmm.
work hand in hand. The nervous system, the endocrine system are
Mm-hmm.
intimately connected, and it comes primarily through structural alignment. Now, here's what I would say: all illness is usually the result of some conflict pattern that the person's holding. They're thinking one thing and they're feeling another. The head
Mm-hmm.
says, I know this, but, and when the but comes, you got a problem. That creates a physical tension in the body, which
Mm-hmm.
then causes in chiropractic what we call a subluxation, which manifests in a misalignment in the spinal column, the main conduit of the nervous system. So adjustments can reconnect brain and head and heart, but unless the patient really goes deeper and figures out where the conflict is, it's a revolving door treatment. Back, you got to come 3 times a week, twice a week, once
Yeah.
a week.
You keep
Eventually,
getting yourself out of alignment.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
we keep recreating the interference pattern. Now,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes some patients didn't have to come 3 times a week. They could come once or twice, and I wouldn't see them for 6 months. Others wanted me to come every day. It depends on the level of interference and distortion you're carrying. Some
Mm-hmm.
of the interferences are not just structural; they're biochemical. The nutrition is off, way off,
Mm-hmm.
and the others are psychospiritual. They've been traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
So we have structural misalignments, toxins, and psychospiritual conflicts. All three need to be addressed to heal a person, to help them to heal themselves. There's a misnomer: no one ever healed anybody else.
Yeah.
Where we assist the person to heal themselves.
Make space for their own healing, which comes naturally when all the interference is gone. It sounds like speaking your truth could be a really powerful a way of life, or even as a therapy, that if you're saying there's this disconnect between what I think and how I really feel, like if you're not speaking your truth, if you're not living your truth, that's going to create illness in the body, right?
Absolutely. Unequivocally, the cells are listening. Your body, your little pinky and your big toe are talking to each other. So we used to do kinesiology. We'd ask them a question and we muscle test them. So they would say one thing, but when I muscle test them, the body says, nay, nay. They're not telling you the truth.
Yeah.
They were disconnected. So healing is in the integration of head and heart, mind and body.
Mm. That's really beautiful. I love that. And now you've studied a lot of different healing modalities in your lifetime, haven't you?
I've been a good subject. I've tried quite a few things, and I'm going to say there's a time and place for modern medicine, without a
Mm-hmm.
doubt. I'm not a big fan of pharmacology
Mm-hmm.
because every time we introduce a medication into the system, we can create more imbalance. We disturb the homeostasis. But there's a time for surgery, and there's a time for short-term use of medicines appropriately. We have unfortunately relied too heavily on an outside-in approach. But I don't want to get rid of the emergency rooms. They're necessary. If there's a trauma, there's a car
Saved
accident.
your life recently too, didn't they?
It did, and I am supremely thankful that when I had a heart attack, that there was help given to me. Yeah, and there was a blessing in that heart attack. There was a silver lining for me, and what I came to experience was a deeper connection to my own soul self.
Mm.
And any fear I had, any residue, and I didn't have a lot, but any residue I had fear of doubt about, well, maybe this is all there is. Death is either oblivion or it's migration. I now know without a doubt there is no death. And I have no fear of death whatsoever. When I drop my body, I will still be me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's almost nothing more comforting than that. Because what is there to fear then, really? What is there to fear?
You don't really go anywhere. You're just on another channel. Wayne
Mm-hmm.
might be listening in. Who knows?
Oh,
I
he
feel
definitely
I
is.
feel like he's with me wherever I go anyway. I mean, he's my big brother.
Yeah, I think about I think it's a Bible quote, but it's wherever two or more of you gather in my name, there I will be. I mean, I'm not saying Wayne was Jesus, he wasn't, but we are all one, we are all God. But I think about that for anyone who's passed on. That sort of connection, it draws them in more, I think, when you have two or more people that are thinking about them or remembering stories with them, or like in his case, reading one of his books. Like I can't remember what book it was, but there was a page in it that said, wherever you are, whenever you're reading this, we are connecting right now. That time and space is basically illusion, and we are having this connection in whatever time you are reading this. Like maybe I wrote this years ago and now you're reading it. But I read that after he'd already passed on, and I thought, this is still true. This is still true. And I feel like there's something really powerful in that. And what an honor it was for him to have put all of his teachings into materials that will outlive him by generations. Because there's a piece of him still living and breathing and moving through our lives and into our lives, and helping us to learn the things that he learned.
Thank God he put his books on audio books, because
Yeah.
when you listen to his audio books, it's like he's right there. He's right with you, and
Yeah.
we'll have that. In eternity, if they put it on disc form and they save it, you can always play it one of his audios and feel like he's right with you. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to do that by my book too. By the way, I wrote it. It's on e-file, but I'm going to do audio version. I'm going to read my own stories.
Great.
Yeah, because here's what I've discovered. The millennials, please, if any millennials will listen, they don't read for the most part. They're all got earbuds. They're on their bikes, they're in their cars, they're on the treadmill. So I'm going to read my stories as an audio book so that
Hmm.
when I drop the body too, maybe I'll live in the immortality by people hearing my voice and remembering my stories. And I will read it because I experienced these. They were going to have a professional. They said, "Well, get someone professional to do it." I said, "No, no, I live this.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel the stories when I read it. You're gonna feel my sadness and my joy when I read these stories because
Well,
I
I
experienced it."
love it when it's read by the author, because then there's more of them in it, and you get that emotion and that intonation and that personality that you're not necessarily going to get from a great speaker, but it's not the person who wrote it.
Now I'm from the Bronx, so my diction may not be perfect, but people are going to feel it when I read my book. Even though I may mispronounce a word or slur,
Hmm.
people know when they meet me down here in Florida, they say, "You're from New York, aren't you?" And I said, "Why?" They said, "Well, you talk funny." And now, of course, I say back to them, "Me? You're the ones who are talking."
Yeah. I'm
A lot of
I'm talking
Midwest
normally. You guys all sound funny.
A lot of Midwesterners here I'm in Naples, Bonita Springs, the West Coast, and they're
Hmm.
all from the Midwest. Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, mini Snowda. They don't even call it Minnesota anymore. There's so much snow up there, but they all speak beautifully,
Hmm.
and they all enunciate. But they know right away. They know you're up east, and they know I'm not from Boston because I ain't saying pack your car in Harvard Square. That's a deal one.
Well, you definitely bring a presence with you, Dr. Harris, and I love that. And I think about the quote often of people won't remember the words that you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. And I think about that whenever I try to share something, and I'm like, I'm never going to get the words just right. I'm not going to remember everything. I'm going to forget something, but don't worry about it, because it's the heart that comes through. And I think if you open your heart and you show up, then what comes through is going to reach people. And you have with your book, I think you have every time you show up and give a talk. So hopefully, as the pandemic winds down, fingers crossed, you'll
Oh,
have
it's
more
going to wind down.
opportunities. Yeah.
It's already, the curve is starting to flatten. And I just would say this, I don't want to get into a great controversy, but only 10% of the population has been vaccinated. So there's no herd immunity. The
Yeah.
virus is reaching its own plateau point. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, many comorbid ill people were taken out, and I feel bad about that. But
Hmm.
that's what viruses do. That's part of the natural bigger cycle. So this virus now is going to come down whether we had a vaccine or not, in my opinion, based on what has happened in the past with other viral pandemics. So
Do you
yeah,
think fear impacts our immune system?
it disconnects. It's one of the worst poisons you could ever have.
Hmm.
And it can be measured in your T cells, your macrophages, your blood chemistry. When you go into a fear state, you literally create a disturbance in the field, emotionally, physically, and chemically. And
Hmm.
fear, and that's what's happened. Unfortunately, there's been so much fear. People believe the misperception that if you get COVID, you're going to die, and 98% of people will not die. And we know
Hmm.
that statistically. They may be ill, they may suffer a week or two or three, but they're going to get better. A small percentage of comorbid or people who are already ill, it tipped them. This virus
Yeah.
definitely tipped them
Well,
over
I
the.
think the truth is we're always facing mortality. We're always facing risks. We quantify some of them. We don't pay attention to others. It's rarely what we focus on of what actually ends up killing us. It's usually something else, right? But I learned something from Wayne Dyer when he would talk about, when a virus lands on me, I'm like, not today, virus, right? Like, you've landed on the wrong person. And I think whatever happened, and it's not like he had perfect health through his life. He didn't. He's human for sure. But I feel like he had this attitude that put him at peace. And that no matter what happens, like he was going to be okay. And no matter what happens with the country, with the state of things, with the restrictions or the lack of restrictions or whatever, there's something to learn from this. There's something that we are gaining from every experience, and often it is the most challenging experiences of our lives that we grow the most from. So, if we were to be fully enlightened, we would be sending gratitude in response to um, difficulty as it was happening.
Right.
And I know that's a hard thing to do, but I think we can take moments where we sit back and go, okay, I have a choice in this. And choosing love or fear, I think, is one of the most important choices we make. Like, I think it was Einstein who said you need to decide whether you live in a hostile universe or a friendly one, because then it becomes true. And like, the one thing that we can count on for certain is that this life is temporary. It's temporary. We are moving through here. We will continue. I have no doubt that we existed before. We will continue to exist. I don't think we're disconnected from our loved ones who have died. I think they're still here with us. I think they're still interested in what's happening in our world, as petty as it may seem to us. They're interested in how we feel about things and what we're learning and what we're discovering and all those aha moments that we get. They probably sort of live with a greater understanding than we have. But we're just here for a moment. We're here for a moment, and if we spend all of our time trying to make it perfect or trying to prevent every bad thing from ever happening to us, we're never going to have peace. We're never going to have joy. And I swear, if we do that and we die, we're going to go, oh man, like I wasted it. Like, why did I spend so much time worrying about that? Like, in my own lifetime, I can look back and go, why did I spend so much time worrying about whether I was going to get into college or whether I was going to find a job or whether I was going to find the person I wanted to marry or would I be able to have kids? Like, all those things, right? I could have taken the worry out of it, had the same outcome, and really enjoyed the journey.
I agree 1000% everything you just said. We're here for a nanosecond in eternity. We're spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, they say don't sweat the small stuff. Well, it's all small stuff.
It's all
Even,
small stuff.
even death, even what people fear the most. And underneath this pandemic was the fear of death. And that's why people were willing to give up their freedoms and lock themselves in their homes. And it's sad because, as you say, the day you're born, you're destined to, at some point, say goodbye to everyone and everything you ever loved at this
Mm-hmm.
level of creation. Are
Hmm.
we interconnected? Yes, we are. There's no loss. Death is, I can guarantee you this, folks, death is not the end of the show.
Hmm. All these illusions that we think we hold on to, we think we gather things up in our lives, like Dr. Wayne Dyer said, I keep a suit in my closet with the pockets cut out to remind me that you don't get to take anything with you. But the thing is, it wasn't things that we had anyway. And if you can adopt an attitude in life that things are flowing through, you don't really own anything, right? It comes through and it goes out. Oh, there it goes. Well, I enjoyed it. That's all I can get from it. I think if there's one thing that I think is so important for us to learn, maybe now more than ever, is that you can choose joy. Like, people can be suffering, you can be sick, and you can still feel joy. Like be happy anyway, because you're no good to yourself and you're no good to anybody, and it's just going to get in your own way if you're focusing on things that make you feel bad. You're just going to feel worse. And what good does it do
Well,
any of
in the
us?
book Man's Search for Meaning, the guy who wrote the book, he was in a concentration camp. And
Viktor
he said,
Frankl.
yeah,
Mhm.
the people who survived, the one who chose.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, one of Wayne's favorite quotes, he was comical. You're right. We don't own anything. We have the
Mhm.
temporary use of many things. And he was very successful on a material level, but he never. It didn't really. He knew it was temporary. And he said, Kenny, I ain't never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. We're not taking anything with us. And I said, you're right. We just have the temporary use. And he was very generous, by the way. For the audience listening, Wayne gave tens of millions of dollars to public broadcasting.
Mhm.
Somewhere, I believe he told me it was almost $250 million that he had generated over 30 or 40 years. He was on PBS almost every day somewhere in the world. And he
Mhm.
gave the proceeds of all his, he used to say, buy the whole enchilada. That
Right.
was the expression. You remember? Get the tapes, get the books, but he gave most of that money to PBS.
Yeah, I saw a thread in the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community. I think it was like a week ago, and we were talking about his books, and somebody was sharing, "Oh, look, I bought some new books from Wayne Dyer," and this one of the ladies commented, and she said, "Oh yeah, I used to buy the whole enchilada," and I just love that because it brings back such memories to me. And like, you'd have this guy, and he's talking spiritual wisdom. You're not normally like great at sort of sales, but he could, and he wasn't like, I really don't believe it was for selfish reasons. He just
Oh,
wanted to get the message out and he wanted to help people. And he kept writing books long after he needed to, because he had more to share. But I discovered him watching PBS. And I love those talks, and I have a lot of them on DVD. I think you can only find them on like eBay or something because they were originally sold through the PBS stations. But I love it. I love his live lectures. His PBS specials reached so many people. I think he probably had the most fun going on talk shows though. Like, he was on the Tonight Show like 27 times or something like that.
and he had a great sense of humor. He didn't take himself seriously. He knew.
Yeah.
He's trained as a psychologist originally, and
Hmm.
and his evolution of consciousness was from the erroneous zones into I Can See Clearly Now, which is totally a spiritual book.
Yeah,
So he had his own, he went through his own evolution, and he took us along with him. I would
he
say that
did.
that's what he did for people, and he was real. He wasn't holding himself above and beyond suffering. He wasn't afraid to cry if he had to cry if it was appropriate, and he was a great poet too. He loved poetry. He used poetry all the time
He
because I'll
shared a little bit, but I think he wrote a lot more than he shared with us. But yeah.
Well, poetry is the voice of the soul. It's not prose is the voice of the mind. But when you speak in a poetic way, people will remember, like you said before, they'll remember how they feel. And the great poets, and Chopra said this to me too. I used to teach Deepak's 7 spiritual laws of success all around the country. He said he would want to be remembered not as a writer, but as a poet himself. He
Mm.
said simply because the poets are eternal. Wadsworth, Longfellow, you can name Shakespeare, blah, blah, blah. People remember the language of the soul.
I think that poetry, much like music, is kind of a fast track to the emotions, right? It gives you the experience without it having to be filtered through the mind. So let me ask you this, since we talk about being remembered, how do you want to be remembered?
That's a good question. Well, I would like people to remember me as someone who was there for them, that they could call me day or night and I would show up. Because I'm a really good friend to have. I really, I really do love people, and I've been there for people, and people have been there for me. That's probably why my life was spared and saved. The EMT guys, strangers, total strangers, saved my life. I mean, they didn't know me from Adam, and yet they risked their own lives en route to the hospital to get across the divide on the highway and go north on the south side to get me to the ER in time so they could save my life. And they didn't have to do that. So I guess that was my karma coming back. I have been there for many, many people in my own life, and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. And when I put my book out, I sent this to about 40 people, and I got 40 endorsements. Now the publisher says you can't put them all in there, but if you read the endorsements, everyone who gave me an endorsement in this book
That's
genuinely said
great.
their truth. But I have helped every one of those people in some way in my own life. So I wanted to be remembered as a friend, Nadia. To put the long and short of it, someone
Mm-hmm.
you could call on day and night, and he'd show up and help.
Well, I definitely think of you as a friend, and I feel blessed that we connected. You're one of the reasons that I ended up doing the podcast and that it ended up becoming what it was because we had connected, I think, at the end of December the year before. And then several months later, I'd been trying to figure out like I knew I wanted to bring you on. I knew I wanted to like share a conversation with you in front of the group because I knew people would just love this and love you, and I'm sure they do. And then I started this podcast, and I was like, oh, this would be perfect for that. So you were my first guest. So if people haven't heard that, go check out Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life at nadiadelacruz.com. And it's called Synchronicity with Dr. Ken Harris. I think it's I want to say like episode 4, but you'll find the name. So I wanted to read just a little bit from one of your handouts, which is your Principles of Synchronicity. The universe will align you with people, things, and situations that match the energy and frequency you are expressing. People move in and out of your life path based on the law of attraction. The universe is always speaking to you. Pay attention. It's sending little messages to get your attention and remind you that we're all connected and we're not walking through our lives alone. No one is sent into your life by accident. They are either a lesson or a blessing. What's meant to be yours is already finding its way to you, often through synchronicity. Focus on the powerful, euphoric, magical, beautiful, and synchronistic parts of your life, and the universe will keep giving them to you. I love that. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for the amazing book. I've got a signed copy here. You may still offer those on his website. I'm not making any promises. But check it out. Synchronicity with Dr. Ken Harris. You can go to drkenharris.com. Again, doctor spelled out. Yeah. Any parting words? What do you want people to know today?
Well, I want them to know how much I appreciate and love you.
Oh,
And I am so happy. And this is not going to be your last broadcast. You're going to have a whole career of this stuff moving forward. You're a natural born interviewer. I mean, I find it joyful just to be here having a conversation with you. And everybody else is, in my mind, flies on the wall. We had fun. You and I had fun tonight, and that's what it's all about. Just to be real, genuine, authentic, yourself. Someone said you better be yourself because everybody else is taken.
right.
So I love the fact that you're comfortable being who you are. I'm comfortable being who I am,
Mm-hmm.
and we can invite the rest of the world into this conversation and encourage them to be themselves.
Well, Ken, I don't know any other way of doing it. So I just show up, and this is what you get. I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve. Sometimes I break into tears, but you know what? That's it. That's real. This is me. But I do want to give a shout out to some of our audience today. I see Kelly, Audrey, Melissa, JR, Nancy, Sue, Diana, Ronnie, Brandon. Hey, Brandon. He was
Hey,
another.
Brandon from Australia, down
Yeah,
under.
he was. He was another one of my guests on the podcast. We're also good friends now as well. I meet such amazing people doing this. Um, Everyone who's been able to join us today, thank you for being here. Everyone who's watching the replay, I'm going to put this on the podcast and I'll have it available on my YouTube channel. I put all of the videos we do for the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community on my YouTube channel, so I'll put a link down here later. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Harris, for this really enjoyable conversation. I like that we got to dive a little deeper into health and healing and bring some of your wisdom forward. And I'm certain we will do this again.
Thank you so much, Nadia. And just a little shout out, folks. I don't know if you know this, but this woman here is one talented artist. And I don't know if you're going to offer your artwork, but I encourage you to create an art form place where people can go. And she's got some incredible pictures of her children and of Wayne himself. She did a beautiful
Yeah,
one.
this was one of my, I did this
Hold
on
it
the
up.
5th
Can you hold it
anniversary
up?
of his
Can you
passing.
hold it
Yeah.
up? Show it? Can you show it?
Oh.
It's beautiful. I mean, multi-talented. And that's drawn. That's not a photograph. He captured his mug.
Yeah, actually, I'm working on an oracle deck, so because I'm also
There
a
you
card
go.
reader, so it's probably going to take years, but eventually, someday, I'm going to have a really cool
Well,
oracle
I will
deck.
sign a copy when you have it.
Perfect. I will let you know.
All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Harris, and we will see you again. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Namaste.
Adios. Adios. Go with God, folks. That's what it means.